Then let me bring you a brief explanation on the end-to-end Scrum cycle. So we have this list called a product backlog, which is pretty much a prioritized list, dynamic, ever-changing list, reflecting what we can see of what needs to be developed or what we believe needs to be developed in our product. But there is a driving guide, a driving goal for the work we will do in the product, which is what we call a product goal. A market name for that could be a product vision. Okay, some people say that's not the same thing. For me, it's pretty much the same thing. So the product goal is the commitment of the product backlog, which means everything we'll find in the product backlog is there to lead us closer to the product goal or to carry out that product goal. So when we are about to start the next sprint, we are looking at the product goal and thinking, what is the next most important part of that product goal, which is a goal by itself? The top of the product backlog should reflect that. So the top of the product backlog should reflect that next most important part of the product goal. And that's the top of the product backlog that will be removed from the product backlog and will become part of that sprint. So we start the sprint with a sprint planning meeting. And in a sprint planning meeting where we'll have the entire Scrum team, Scrum Master, Product Owner, developers, right? We are creating a plan for that sprint. That plan is called the sprint backlog. So sprint planning plans for this sprint. Sprint backlog exists for this sprint. And what is part of that sprint backlog? Those items we've removed from the top of the product backlog, which are aligned to the next most important part of our product goal. This next slice of our product goal, which is what we call the sprint goal, the goal for that sprint. Of course, those needs to be sized appropriately, right? The sprint goal needs to fit in a sprint, and it brings a goal, but it's vague enough to bring some flexibility. At the same time, the developers are the ones who decide from the top of the product backlog down to where they believe they can implement on that sprint. Okay? So we believe we can take on those 7 items. So it's up to them to decide that. They may use historical data to decide that, right? But as we decide that from the top item down to the 7th, that's what we can do in that sprint in their order, right? Then we need to size the goal appropriately. So see, with the sprint goal, we have why we are doing the sprint. With the items on the sprint backlog, we have what we will be doing in that sprint. And, well, we could break the top items of the sprint backlog into smaller bits of work, tasks, right? We won't break the entire thing. We should do it on the go during the sprint, but that's the how we're doing the work in that sprint. So we have the why, the what, and some of the how. Well, we finish the sprint planning meeting and we start the development implementation work in the sprint, right? Well, developers on a Scrum team, they work according to the priority order from the most important item towards the least important. They work together as a team. So if you remember the rugby analogy behind Scrum, it's a team that moves together as a block, passing the ball amongst them, right? There's no my item, your item, his item, her item. We don't have that in Scrum. We could be working on more than one item at a time, but always according to the priority order. Then on every day, at the same time, and in the same place, we will run a meeting called the Daily Scrum Meeting. That's a meeting with a maximum of 15 minutes, a time box of 15 minutes, we call it a time box, for the developers to coordinate. So it's like an informal synchronization and planning for up to the next day of work. They find opportunities to collaborate, they see where they are regarding the sprint goal. They say, oh, let's work together on this, let's do that, right? According to the order, right? To the priority, right? But that's what the Daily Scrum is about. They could talk about impediments they had, but this is all to create alignment. There used to be 3 questions for the Daily Scrum meeting, which were, what did I do since yesterday? What do I intend to do until tomorrow? And what are word impediments? We can use those, but they are not even more on the guide, on the Scrum guide, okay? They are just like a short script for teams that are beginning with Scrum. They could use that. Then we keep on implementing those items according to the priority. And by the last day of the sprint, we need to close it. And then we have 2 meetings, sprint review and sprint retrospective. Sprint review, well, we will invite external people, relevant stakeholders, clients, key users, maybe experts, maybe people from other teams, maybe actual users. We have to assess who are the people we want there, because those people, we will put them to interact with what we created in the sprint, or what is done in that sprint. And what is done in that sprint is what we call an increment, or we could have more than one increment, okay? Usually we have one, and before 2020, the 2020 guide, we had only one. But now, as some teams are delivering in the middle of the sprint, we could have more than one increment, okay? But anyway, this is the set of things that we created. That's the slice, the valuable slice of the product we created in the sprint. And that we want the guests on the review meeting to interact with. And from those interactions, questions will emerge, we will ask questions, we will see their behavior, and all of that will become raw material for the product owner to feed back into the product backlog. Add more items, change items. That's not the only source, of course. There may be feedback from things that are already in the user's hands, changes in the market, new ideas. That's fine, right? But the sprint review is very important, especially, but not only, if we're not delivering on every sprint. Because with that, we don't spend too much time on our own bubble, believing we're doing the right thing. We expose it to relevant people and we get feedback that may let us know that this is the wrong direction. That's great because we found it soon, not too late on the game, right? So we burst that bubble with the sprint review meeting. And when this meeting is done, those external people will leave, and then the entire Scrum team will remain. And they run a meeting called the Sprint Retrospective, which implements the Agile Principle number 12 regarding continuous improvement. So it's not about dirty laundry or finger pointing. It's about looking at how we work together as a team in this sprint and how we can become more effective. So find some improvement points, a few, 2, 3, maybe 4, right? Create action plans where it makes sense to create action plans. Give visibility to that. And those things, it could be even experiments, right? We will put in practice in the next sprint. One last point here is when we are creating things, when we are creating the increment, and remember, the increment is the result of the work, this increment needs to be done. And what does done mean? So Scrum comes up with a common definition of done, which could mean, for instance, that it has the necessary quality. So it went through the necessary tests, and whatever else in the process, this needs to go through to be considered done. So the definition of done is the commitment of the increment, because everything that's on the increment needs to be done according to that definition of done.